well, I'll make two comments. Okay, one is on this last point, right, about friends, relatives, possessions, and the body. To me, it's related. So Lama Zopa Rinpoche one time gave a teaching I found very beautiful, where he talked about the thought of no need. That was the phrase he used. And what he was saying was that he said for the person who's realized this, he said they have the thought of no need in their mind. And he said an ordinary person can't imagine their peace and happiness.
No need?
No need, like doesn't need anything. You know, and then he said, and it made me, I'll just share my own reflection on it, like from what he was saying was like, you know, ordinarily what we think of as happiness, he didn't use this example, but it's like, let's think of the example of going to Disneyland, Disney World or something, right? Like people say, like everything is like that. I'm just using that as a metaphor, right? But people go there and they say, oh, that's happiness, right? And then actually if you check the person's mind, if you introspect, right? It's like, so the person's there, right? And then they think, oh, what if it rains, right? Then it's going to be like terrible. I came all the way here and spent all this money. What if it... Then if it's really sunny, it could be too hot, right? Then if it's like really good weather, if it's bad weather, then the person's upset. I spent all this money and the weather's bad. If it's good weather, then there are a lot of people there, right? So the lines are going to be long, right? And then the person's there and they're in line, right? And they're waiting, and the feeling is like, oh, this line's so long, right? And I have to wait, and then they finally get onto a ride, and then either the ride's disappointing, right? And they kind of feel disappointed. Sometimes they feel slightly sickened by it, right? Or they finally get on one ride that's really good, right? But it's like 3 minutes, right? And then they have to get back in line. And then they wait again for a long time, right? And then maybe they're getting hungry, or they have to pee and they can't find a bathroom, you know, and like, then they think, oh, you know, oh, I'll drink this big soda, but then, you know, the lines are long, and then what if I'm in line and I can't pee? But, but every now and then they get 3 minutes where it's fun on a particular ride. And then also, like, they might, like, while they're there, eat, like, what's it called? I don't know, what do you have? Like, I don't know, what do they serve? Like, something that's like funnel cake, I was thinking, or something like that. And then, like, for those couple minutes, again, there's like, they might feel like the first couple bites, oh, this is really good, right? Then either they sort of are eating it fast, or they like, what's the word? Or they eat it and then they feel, wow, that was really fatty and like a lot of calories, and I shouldn't have eaten that, and like, that was my cholesterol or something, right? Like, and that's like, what Lama's over, I mean, I'm just using that as a metaphor, but Rinpoche's saying, like, that's ordinary happiness, right? But doesn't just apply to Disney, I'll just use that as a metaphor. All ordinary happiness is like that, right? And then the person says, oh, I had a great, and then like somebody says, oh, how was it? Says, oh, I had a great time. You know, it was so fun, you know, or something. And the other person goes, oh, I better go there. That was fun. Oh, good. You know, that's how we are in all of our normal pleasures, right? And so what Rinpoche is saying is for somebody who lives their life like that, they can't imagine the happiness of what he's calling the thought of no need, right? But it's like this, that the person who's realized these points, right? Like he was saying, they feel unbelievable contentment, right? And he says they might just be laying around. He gives us an example. He says, he goes like laying like this, or so, I don't know, laying around their house even, or something, whatever. Like, and he says, but that person feels like because they let go, right? If they let go of attachment to possessions, and they let go of attachment and grasping at friends and relatives, they let go of grasping at even their own body. Right? And he said, then that person can have so much peace of mind, right? Like, whereas in this moment, that person feels, I don't have to wait in line for anything because there's nothing I'm waiting for. Right? I don't have to worry about the weather because I don't have some agenda. Right? I'm just in the present moment. There's nothing I want or need from this world externally, right? And all I have to do, and he gives examples in Rinpoche where he says, the person can just lay around like saying, meditating on compassion and saying, Om Mani Padme, Om Mani Padme, Om Mani Padme. You know, doing the mantra of the Buddha of compassion, right? He gives that sometimes as an example where he says, so that person, right, in their mind, they're just feeling like devotion and love and compassion, and like there's nothing else they need, right? And he says for that person, like if the food is simple or if it's not simple, doesn't matter. Right? If people are treating them like, oh, you're so great, or people don't care about them, like it's not a big deal, right? It's not that's not their purpose, right? Like to have people say, oh, you're so great. or to have people say, "Oh, I really like you. You're wonderful," or something like. So they don't worry about any of that, right? So they don't have any. So Rinpoche's pointing out they don't have any worries, they don't have any anxieties, they don't have any agendas, they don't have any like what's there say, frustrations. That's the word. And so then there can be so much peace of mind. So he says that's where he says. So he says so for the ordinary person, like the Mickey Mouse person or something, they can't. I mean that's us, right? Or me. I don't know, like he says when somebody's in that state, then you can't even imagine the peace of mind in the other state. And he says, and like from the person who's like having the desire life, right? Then that would seem like they would actually be afraid of that. Like, oh, that might be boring or something. And he says, but it's because they can't even imagine actually that kind of peace of mind. And then he says, but that's the source of peace of mind. That's the source of so much tranquility or contentment or happiness. You know? And so all of that, going back, now it ties back to the very beginning, right? All of that is related to the advantages and disadvantages, right? Like, the advantage of these contemplations is that. And like, that's the last thing I was going to say, is like, so Rinpoche, you know, it's like, you can't have the thought of no egocentric agenda just by saying, wow, I'd like to have that, right? I'd like to have peace of mind. It doesn't work that way, right? It only comes about through these kind of contemplations, right? And if you meditate enough on impermanence and death, where you suddenly, like, the stuff we grasp that strongly, then our level of grasping goes down, 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 slowly. I mean, maybe it's not like this, maybe it's more like this. You know? It's a gradual process. But that's what Rinpoche is pointing out. You know, so I just wanted to share it. Like, he just gives an example where he's like, that's the advantage of this kind of meditation. And then, of course, like, the person becomes more and more, what's the word? Just like happy to practice Dharma, right? Where the person's so, like, you know, and sometimes, like, I think that, like, I remember recently I was reading another biography of one of Lama Zopa's teachers, Geshe Rebten, maybe you know, and it was describing him, and I was like, at first, sometimes I couldn't believe it. He was like, he underwent so many, he would like, his whole life he was like incredibly, he like loved practicing Dharma, but he was like incredibly poor, like he didn't have enough food, and he was like, but he said he was so happy, and then finally he reached a point where he became a famous teacher, and so people started giving him a lot of food and offerings. And the first thing he did was he went to the Dalai Lama and he said, "Can I please leave? I want to go up to the mountains and meditate." And he went back up and had like not enough food. He was meditating in a cave or in a hut. And he kept saying in his autobiography, "I was so happy to be up there. I was so happy to." And I was like reading, I'm like, "Oh, you finally had food." You know, I was like thinking like, you know, but he was describing this, right? Like in other words, he had realized these points, and so he was so happy, you know. And like anything that distracted him from that, where it would start to be like some other agenda, was just, it's like what ordinary people thought of as happiness to him was like a distraction. It was like dragging somebody to Disney World to wait in line or something. It's like, why would I want to be there? Like, the real happiness is internal. And so that was one reflection. And the last thing I'll mention, then we'll finish the prayer, is I was actually, if we'd had more time, I would have done one more exercise, which is it's just a suggestion. I mean, those are the actual meditations, right? Then one last suggestion I'll make is like, sometimes I find this useful, and the Dalai Lama suggests it, so it's not my idea. Is but the Dalai Lama sometimes says, debate with yourself. So the last thing I was going to say is, you know, if you've meditated on these points for a while, or you think you're making progress, sometimes I find that interesting, and the Dalai Lama suggests it, is to sort of say that. It's almost like imagine the part of you that grasps at permanence, and like almost imagine here in front of you, you know, or something, and have it say its agenda, right? So that part would say, like, you know, well, yeah, you know, I mean, it wouldn't say, it's not like if you guys are all smart enough, you know, that part of you wouldn't say, no, I'm going to live forever, right? It wouldn't be that stupid, right? But it would make its own argument, right? Its argument might be like, yeah, but, you know, there's a good chance you'll live to 85, 90, and, you know, there's a lot of pleasurable things to do, and, you know, it's better, you know, so you'll practice Dharma sometimes, or, like, do a few minutes a day, or a little bit here and there. You know, but what would it say, right? It would have its own arguments, right? You know, well, you know, your friends are going here, and, like, there's this other thing, and your family expects you, and, you know, like, and, like, actually imagine it. Like, you know, people expect you and need you to do this and this and this, and Dharma stuff is less, you know, that's okay for, like, what, you know, you could do, like, 5 minutes before you get on the train to go to work, or something like that part, whatever its argument would be, I don't know, you know, make it so, but, like, let that part really express itself, like, to see what's my, you know, you've been meditating on this, right? But then what's, like, the residual part of me that still says no. And then debate. You know, like use these points, use your own points. The Dalai Lama says that. He says, then debate with it. He says that's the real, you know, like when you see the monks doing their debate in the courtyards, right? They're like saying that. He says like, that's preparation. You know, really the ultimate, what's the word, opponent in debate is your own subconscious, you know, your own self, you know. And so I just would say, like, do these meditations, you know, if you do them regularly. But I would just, this is my own suggestion, but it comes from that. It's like, so sometimes to actually imagine that part of you and let it say to you, like, you know, so imagine it there, you know, and have it say all the stuff, right? And actually that part of you will have really good arguments, I think. Not intellectually good, but it'll have extensive ones because it was raised to have those, right? In other words, it was raised by your parents to have those. You've learned it from your culture. You've learned it from your relatives and your friends. And so that part will have a lot of debate points. And it's an interesting exercise to say, well, what's my answer to that? You know, when that part says, yeah, but everybody expects you to do this, you have to. Well, what's my answer to that? And go back to these points and check, do I have an answer? You know? And that way your mind gets more and more clear, you know, about what's important to you and what your thing is. And keep going until you convince yourself or not.